The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the enormous hall. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked forward on the polished floor, her black boots clicking against the strange metal that seemed to shift colors with each step. Above her, the ceiling stretched so high that clouds had formed near the top, and strange lights floated in patterns that hurt her human eyes to follow. Elena had seen pictures of this place, but being here felt different. The air smelled like copper and electricity, with hints of something sweet that made her nose wrinkle. She could hear the breathing, humming, and clicking sounds of hundreds of alien beings, each one representing a different world in the galaxy. As she walked to the center of the chamber, Elena looked around at the creatures watching her. Some looked almost familiar, like the tall blue beings with 4 arms who reminded her of pictures from Earth's science fiction movies. Others were so strange that her brain struggled to understand what she was seeing. There was a floating jellyfish-like creature that sparkled with its own light, a pile of rocks that somehow moved and breathed, and something that looked like a tree made of metal with glowing fruit hanging from its branches. Largest section of seats belonged to the crystalline beings from Zerion Prime. Their bodies looked like living diamonds, each one the size of a small building. Light passed through them and came out in rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. At the very top of the chamber, floating in a beam of white light, was Chancellor Zix-9. Elena had read about the Chancellor in the files back on Earth. It was over 2,000 years old and had been leading the Council for the past 5 centuries. Elena reached the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. A small device rose from the floor and floated near her mouth. She knew this was the translator, a machine that would turn her words into every language spoken in the galaxy. The device hummed softly and glowed green, showing it was ready. Chancellor Zix-9's voice filled the chamber. When it spoke, Elena could hear the words in English, but she also heard the original sounds underneath, like crystal bells ringing in a pattern. Representative of the species known as human, from the world-designated Earth in Sector 24C, you have been summoned to receive the terms of your planet's integration into the Galactic Council. Elena nodded but said nothing. She had been trained for this moment for 3 years, ever since Earth had first made contact with the galaxy. The training had covered alien cultures, galactic law, and diplomatic procedures. But most importantly, it had covered what would happen in this room today. The Chancellor continued speaking. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace and order across 847 worlds. This peace exists because every species understands their place in the greater community. New species must prove their commitment to this peace through tribute. Around the chamber, alien heads nodded. Elena saw expressions that she thought might be agreement, though it was hard to tell with being so different from humans. A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles in what seemed like approval, a flowing liquid being changed colors and patterns that Elena guessed meant something positive. The tribute system ensures that new species contribute to the stability and growth of galactic civilization, Chancellor Zix-9 explained. It prevents chaos and conflict. It maintains the natural order that has served us well for millennia. Elena listened carefully. She had read about this system in the files. Every new species that joined the galaxy had to pay tribute to the Council. The tributes were always heavy, designed to keep new species weak and dependent on the Council's protection. Species that refused to pay faced complete destruction by the Council's massive fleets. Chancellor Zix-9 raised one of its crystalline arms, and the chamber fell completely silent. The Council has reviewed Earth's resources, population, and technological capabilities. Your tribute requirements have been calculated with fairness and wisdom. A holographic display appeared in the air above Elena's head. The images showed Earth's continents, major cities, and industrial centers. Numbers floated next to each image, all written in the standard galactic script that Elena had learned to read. First, the Chancellor announced, Earth will provide 60% of its annual industrial production. This includes all manufactured goods, processed materials, and technological products. These items will be distributed to Council worlds as needed. Elena felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her face calm. 60% of Earth's industry would cripple the planet's economy and leave billions of people without jobs. Second, Earth will provide 40% of its food production each year. This includes grain, protein sources, processed foods, and any other nutritional products. Hunger is unknown in Council space, and Earth will help maintain this achievement. The hologram showed images of Earth's farms, fishing fleets, and food processing plants. Elena thought about the famines this would cause. The children who would go hungry while alien worlds grew fat on Earth's harvests. Third, Earth will provide 100,000 humans each year for the labor programs. These individuals will work on council projects throughout the galaxy. They will receive proper care and housing, and their families will be compensated with credits in the galactic economy. Elena's hands clenched into fists behind her back. The labor programs were slavery by another name. Humans would be shipped across the galaxy to work in mines, factories, and farms on alien worlds. Most would never see Earth again. Chancellor Zix-9 continued. These tribute requirements will begin immediately and continue indefinitely. Earth's integration into the Council will be complete once the first tribute shipment arrives at the designated collection stations. The chamber erupted in sounds that Elena assumed were approval. The crystalline beings rang like church bells. The insect creatures buzzed in harmony, and the liquid beings flowed in synchronized waves. Only a few sections remained quiet, and Elena noticed that these beings looked smaller and sadder than the others. She wondered if they remembered what it felt like to be in Earth's position. Representative of humanity, Chancellor Zix-9 said, "Do you understand the terms that have been presented? Do you require clarification on any aspect of Earth's tribute obligations?" Elena looked up at the floating crystal being. "I understand the terms perfectly, Chancellor." "Excellent. The Council recognizes that this is a significant moment for your species. Therefore, we grant you the standard deliberation period of 24 standard hours. You may contact your world's leadership and prepare your formal acceptance. During this time, you are welcome to use the Council's communication facilities." Elena bowed slightly. "Thank you, Chancellor. I request permission to retire to the communication chamber." Permission granted. The Council will reconvene tomorrow at the same time to receive Earth's formal acceptance and discuss the tribute delivery schedules. As Elena turned to leave, she heard the creatures around her making sounds that seemed pleased. She caught fragments of translated conversations as she walked toward the exit. "Another world joins the proper order," buzzed an insect. "Delegate. The humans seemed very small," gurgled a water-breathing alien. "They will not cause trouble like the Vaxians did." "Their industrial capacity is impressive for such a young species," chimed a crystalline being. "The tribute will benefit many worlds." Elena reached the chamber doors and stepped through them. The hallway beyond was quieter, with only a few alien creatures moving between rooms. She followed the signs to the communication center, her mind already focused on the call she needed to make. In 24 hours, she would return to this chamber. In 24 hours, the galaxy would learn something new about humanity. She smiled slightly as she walked, thinking about the word that would change everything. Elena sat alone in the communication chamber, staring at the quantum transmitter that would connect her to Earth. The room was smaller than the Great Council Hall, but still massive by human standards. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps, and the air hummed with the energy of advanced technology that humanity was only beginning to understand. She placed her hand on the transmitter's interface. The machine scanned her palm, confirmed her identity, and opened a secure channel to Earth. The quantum connection meant there would be no delay, despite the thousands of light years between the Council Station and her homeworld. The screen flickered to life, showing the emergency session room in Geneva. Elena could see representatives from every major nation on Earth, along with military leaders, scientists, and diplomats. President Chen of the Global Federation sat at the head of the table, her face grave with concern. "Elena," President Chen said immediately, "we've been waiting for your call. How bad is it?" Elena looked directly into the camera. "It's exactly what we expected, Madam President. 60% of industrial output, 40% of food production, and 100,000 people per year for their labor programs." The room erupted in angry voices. Elena could hear someone cursing in Russian, another person shouting in Arabic, and the British representative saying something very impolite about the Council's ancestry. President Chen raised her hand for silence. "Those terms would destroy our civilization," said General Morrison, Earth's top military officer. "We'd be reduced to a farming planet in 10 years. "Less than that," added Dr. Patel, Earth's chief economist. "The industrial losses alone would trigger a global depression. The food shortages would cause famines across Africa and Asia. and taking 100,000 people every year. That's kidnapping on a massive scale, Elena nodded. The Chancellor called it integration into the galactic community. But we all know what it really is. President Chen leaned forward. Elena, you've seen them now. You've been in their chamber. What's your assessment? Can we negotiate? Can we find a middle ground? Elena thought about the crystalline beings ringing like bells in approval, the insect creatures buzzing with satisfaction, and the liquid aliens flowing in celebration. No, Madam President. There's no negotiation here. This isn't a discussion between equals. They see us as a resource to be harvested. What about the other species? Asked Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's xenobiologist. Surely some of them object to this system. I saw a few sections that stayed quiet during the announcement, Elena replied. Smaller species, ones that looked defeated. I think they remember being in our position. But they're not going to help us. They're too scared. President Chen was quiet for a moment, then asked the question everyone was thinking. Elena, what happens if we refuse? They have fleets, Madam President. Thousands of ships, some the size of cities. The files we captured from that crashed scout ship 3 years ago showed us their weapons. They can crack a planet's crust from orbit. The room fell silent. Elena could see the weight of the decision settling on the shoulders of Earth's leaders. They were being asked to choose between slavery and death. General Morrison spoke first. Our defense grid isn't ready. The orbital platforms won't be complete for another 5 years. Our fleet has 30 ships total, and most of them are converted cargo vessels. The population won't stand for it, said the representative from India. If we tell people they have to give up their children to alien slave masters, there will be riots in every city. And if we refuse and they destroy our world, there won't be anyone left to riot, replied the German delegate grimly. President Chen looked around the table. I want to hear from everyone. All options on the table. Dr. Kim, what about evacuation? Could we move our population to other worlds? Dr. Kim shook her head. Not in 24 hours. Even with all our ships working continuously, we could maybe evacuate a few thousand people. The logistics are impossible. What about hiding? Asked the Canadian representative. Could we make Earth appear uninhabited? Too late for that, said General Morrison. They know exactly where we are and what our population is. Their scouts have been watching us for months. Elena listened to the discussion and felt a familiar anger building in her chest. It was the same anger she had felt as a child when bullies tried to take her lunch money. The same anger she had felt as a young diplomat when corrupt officials demanded bribes. The same anger that had driven her to join the diplomatic corps in the first place. There is another option, Elena said quietly. The room turned to look at her on the screen. President Chen raised an eyebrow. Go on. We tell them no. The silence that followed was absolute. Elena could see faces around the table showing shock, fear, and something that might have been hope. General Morrison was the first to speak. Elena, you just told us they can destroy planets. That's not a fight we can win. Maybe not, Elena replied. But consider this. They've been running this system for 3,000 years. Every species has surrendered immediately. They're not expecting resistance. They're not prepared for it. Dr. Patel leaned forward. You're talking about a military solution? Helena, their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Not necessarily a military solution, Elena said. Think about what they really want. They want resources and labor. But they also want order. They want predictability. A species that fights back disrupts their entire system. President Chen was nodding slowly. You're thinking about psychological warfare. Exactly. They've built their entire civilization on the idea that new species will submit. What happens to that system if we don't? What happens to their authority if other species see that resistance is possible? The Brazilian representative spoke up. It's a huge risk, Elena. We could be betting our entire species on a psychological theory. We're betting our species anyway, Elena replied. The only question is whether we bet it on submission or resistance. General Morrison was studying tactical displays on his tablet. If we were going to resist, we'd need to make it costly for them. Hit their stations, disrupt their supply lines, make them pay for every move they make against us. Our ships are faster than theirs, added the chief engineer from the space program. The new quantum drives give us a mobility advantage. We can't match their firepower, but we might be able to avoid it. President Chen called for a vote. All in favor of accepting the Council's tribute demands? No hands rose. all in favor of rejecting the tribute and accepting the consequences. Every hand in the room went up. Elena felt a surge of pride in her species. Faced with impossible odds, humanity was choosing to fight rather than kneel. "Elena," President Chen said, "when you go back to that chamber tomorrow, you'll be speaking for all of us. Are you ready for this?" Elena smiled for the first time since arriving at the council station. "Madam President, I've been ready for this my whole life. There's just one thing I need to know." "What's that?" "When they ask for our answer, how exactly should I phrase our response?" President Chen's smile was as sharp as a blade. "Keep it simple, Elena, keep it clear. Tell them exactly what humanity thinks of their tribute system." "Understood, Madam President. I'll make sure the message is unmistakable." As the connection ended, Elena sat back in her chair and thought about tomorrow. She thought about the crystalline chancellor floating in its beam of light, expecting humanity's submission. She thought about the hundreds of alien species who had given up their freedom without a fight. Most of all, she thought about the single word that would change the galaxy forever. Outside the communication chamber, alien delegates were already making plans for Earth's tribute shipments. They discussed which worlds would benefit most from human labor, which council members would receive the largest shares of Earth's industrial output. None of them imagined that in less than 24 hours, their ancient system would face its first real challenge. Elena smiled and began preparing for the most important speech in human history. Elena woke up early on the morning of the second day. She had slept better than expected, considering that today she would either save humanity or doom it. The guest quarters on the council station were comfortable enough, though the bed was designed for a creature much larger than a human. She had spent the night sleeping on what was probably meant to be a footstool. She dressed carefully in her formal diplomatic uniform, a simple black suit with the Earth Federation emblem on the shoulder. No jewelry, no decorations, nothing that might distract from her words. She looked at herself in the mirror and practiced the speech she had prepared. It was very short. The hallways of the station were busier today. Word had spread that a new species would be formally joining the council, and delegates from across the galaxy had come to witness the ceremony. Elena walked past creatures she had never seen before, each one stranger than the last. A group of floating gas beings drifted by, their forms shifting like colored smoke. Something that looked like a walking tree nodded to her as she passed, its bark-like skin rustling with each step. Most of the aliens ignored her completely. To them, she was just another representative of a conquered species, about to formally surrender her world's freedom. Elena had read the historical records. This ceremony had been performed 847 times before. It always ended the same way. As she approached the main chamber, Elena could hear the sounds of celebration coming from inside. The crystalline beings were ringing like church bells. The insect creatures were buzzing in harmony, and dozens of other alien voices were making sounds of joy and approval. They were celebrating Earth's defeat before it had even been announced. The massive doors opened as Elena approached. She walked into the chamber and saw that it was even more crowded than yesterday. The regular delegates were all in their seats, but now the upper galleries were filled with observers. Elena estimated that nearly 1,000 alien beings were watching her. Chancellor Zix-9 floated in its beam of light at the top of the chamber, its crystalline form casting rainbow patterns across the walls. When Elena reached the speaking platform in the center, the translator device rose from the floor and hummed to life. Representative of humanity, the Chancellor's voice filled the chamber. Welcome back to the Council of Worlds. Have you completed your deliberations with your planet's leadership? I have, Chancellor, Elena replied. Her voice was steady and clear. Excellent. Today marks a joyous occasion as Earth joins the great community of worlds under Council guidance. Your species will contribute to the peace and prosperity that has blessed this galaxy for 3 millennia. Around the chamber, alien creatures made sounds of approval. Elena saw delegates nodding their heads, waving tentacles or flashing lights in patterns that seemed positive. In the upper galleries, the observers leaned forward to get a better view of the ceremony. Chancellor Zix-9 raised one of its crystalline arms. Before we proceed with the formal integration ceremony, the Council requires your planet's official response to the tribute requirements. For the record, please state Earth's acceptance of the terms presented yesterday. The chamber fell silent. Even the background humming of machinery seemed to quiet down. Elena could feel the weight of 1,000 alien gazes upon her. In this moment, she represented not just Earth, but the hopes and dreams of 10 billion human beings. Elena looked up at the Chancellor, then slowly turned to face each section of the chamber. She wanted every delegate to see her face when she gave humanity's answer. "Chancellor," she said clearly, "I have Earth's official response to the Council's tribute demands. Proceed." Representative Elena took a deep breath. She thought about her home world, spinning peacefully in space around its yellow star. She thought about the children playing in parks, the farmers working in fields, the scientists and artists and dreamers who made humanity what it was. She thought about the choice her species had made, to stand up rather than kneel down. "No." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. For a moment the chamber was absolutely silent. The translator hummed softly, confirming that the word had been correctly transmitted into every language in the galaxy. Then chaos erupted. The crystalline beings began ringing frantically, their chimes discordant and sharp. Insect creatures buzzed in agitation, their wings beating so fast they became invisible. Liquid aliens turned bright red and started flowing in rapid, angry patterns. In the galleries above, observers began shouting in dozens of languages. Chancellor Zix-9's form flickered rapidly, the light passing through its body shifting from calm blue to agitated orange to furious red. Representative of humanity, there appears to be an error in translation. Please repeat your planet's response. Elena looked directly at the Chancellor. There is no error, Chancellor. Earth's response to your tribute demands is no. We decline. The chamber exploded into even greater chaos. Some delegates were on their feet, waving appendages and shouting in alien languages. Others seemed frozen in shock as if they couldn't process what they were hearing. The mechanical beings in one section were emitting loud beeping sounds that hurt Elena's ears. Above the noise, Elena could hear fragments of translated conversations. "This is impossible. No species has ever refused. They must not understand what this means. Call the fleets immediately." Chancellor Zix-9's voice boomed over the chaos, amplified to a volume that shook the chamber walls. "Silence!" The room gradually quieted, though Elena could still hear anxious muttering from the galleries above. "Representative of humanity," the Chancellor said, its voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Your species appears to misunderstand the nature of Council authority. The tribute requirements are not a request. They are not a negotiation. They are a decree from the legitimate government of this galaxy." Elena nodded calmly. "I understand perfectly, Chancellor." And Earth's answer remains the same. No. A delegate from the insect section buzzed loudly. "They cannot refuse. It violates 3,000 years of precedent." "Perhaps they wish to negotiate the terms?" suggested a liquid alien. "Many species attempt to bargain for reduced tributes." Elena turned to address the chamber directly. "Earth is not interested in negotiating tribute terms. We are not interested in reduced payments or extended schedules. We reject the entire concept of tribute. Humanity will not be slaves to the Council or anyone else." The word slaves caused another eruption of angry sounds. Elena noticed that several sections of the chamber remained quiet, and she realized these were the representatives of species that were currently paying tribute. They were watching with expressions she couldn't read, but she sensed something like hope in their silence. Chancellor Zix-9 floated lower, its massive crystalline form now close enough that Elena could see the energy patterns flowing through its body. "Representative, your species is young and ignorant of galactic realities. The tribute system maintains peace across 847 worlds. It prevents the chaos and warfare that once devastated entire sectors of space." "Chancellor," Elena replied, "humanity has studied your histories. We know about the wars that ended 3,000 years ago. We also know that your peace is built on the slavery of conquered species. That is not peace. That is oppression with better marketing." Gasps and shocked sounds came from around the chamber. Elena realized that no one had ever spoken to the Council leadership this way before. The Chancellor's form was now glowing bright red. "The consequences of refusing Council authority are well documented, Representative. Your species will face complete annihilation. Your world will be reduced to molten rock. Every human who has ever lived will be forgotten." Elena felt a chill of fear run down her spine, but she kept her voice steady. "Chancellor, you are threatening to commit genocide because humanity refuses to be enslaved. Do you hear yourself? Do you understand what that makes you?" The chamber fell silent again. Elena could see alien faces showing confusion, shock, and what might have been shame. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone was forcing the council to confront the moral reality of their system. The council maintains order, the chancellor said, but its voice lacked the confidence it had held before. The council maintains tyranny, Elena replied, and today that tyranny ends. She turned to face the entire chamber one more time. To the delegates of species currently paying tribute, you don't have to accept this system. You have the right to be free. To the council leadership, humanity rejects your authority completely. We will defend ourselves, and we will defend any species that chooses to stand with us. Elena began walking toward the chamber doors. Behind her, the chaos resumed as delegates shouted questions and demands. But as she reached the exit, she heard something that made her smile. In one of the quieter sections, a small alien voice whispered the word "no" in its own language. The revolution had begun. Elena walked calmly out of the council chamber while behind her, the galaxy's oldest institution fell into complete chaos. The massive doors closed with a thunderous boom, but she could still hear the shouting and arguing through the thick walls. She had just done something that no being in 3,000 years had dared to do, and the shockwaves were spreading fast. As she walked down the corridor toward her quarters, Elena passed groups of aliens huddled together in urgent conversation. The translator implants were working overtime, turning the babble of alien languages into fragments of understandable words. Impossible, unprecedented, what happens now, and most frequently, no. A group of crystalline beings blocked her path. They were smaller than Chancellor Zix-9, their forms glowing with agitation. One of them spoke, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. Human representative, you must return to the chamber immediately. You must correct your error. Elena looked up at the towering crystal creature. There was no error. Humanity's answer is final. You do not understand, chimed another crystalline being. No species refuses the council. It is not possible. It has never happened. It just happened, Elena replied simply and walked around them. Behind her, she heard the crystals ringing in distress as they tried to process this new reality. Their entire understanding of how the universe worked had just been shattered by a single word. Elena reached her quarters and activated the quantum communicator. Earth's leadership was waiting for her call, gathered in the same emergency session room in Geneva. The moment her face appeared on their screens, she could see the tension in their faces. Elena, President Chen said immediately, we've been monitoring the galactic communication networks. Every news service in the galaxy is reporting what just happened. How are you doing? I'm fine, Madam President, Elena replied, but things are moving very fast here. The council is in complete chaos. They literally don't know how to handle a refusal. General Morrison leaned forward. Elena, our deep space sensors are picking up movement from council fleets. Ships are breaking orbit from stations across the galaxy. It looks like they're mobilizing for war. Elena nodded. That's what we expected. How long until they reach Earth? The fastest ships could be here in 72 hours, the general replied. But our intelligence suggests they'll want to gather a larger force first, probably a week before they arrive in full strength. That gives us time, Elena said. What's the status of our preparations? Dr. Kim spoke up from her position at the table. The evacuation ships are ready, Elena. We can get the essential personnel and genetic samples off-world if needed. But most of our population will have to stay and face whatever comes. Elena shook her head. No evacuations. We're not running from this fight. The room was quiet for a moment. Then President Chen spoke carefully. Elena, you've done something incredible today. You've given humanity a moment of dignity that will be remembered forever. But we need to be realistic about our chances. Madam President, something is happening here that we didn't expect, Elena said. The council isn't just angry about our refusal. They're terrified. For 3,000 years, their entire system has been based on the idea that resistance is impossible. We've just proven that idea wrong. As if to emphasize her point, Elena's door chimed. She looked at the security screen and saw a small alien creature standing in the hallway. It looked like a cross between a turtle and a bird, with a shell-like back and bright, intelligent eyes. There's someone here to see me, Elena told Earth's leaders. "I'll call you back in a few minutes." Elena opened the door and looked down at the small alien. It came up to about her waist and was trembling slightly. "Human representative," the creature said in a high musical voice. "I am Delegate Tickrick of the Kellen people. May I speak with you privately?" Elena looked around the corridor to make sure they weren't being watched, then stepped aside to let the alien enter her quarters. The door closed behind them. "Delegate Tickrick," Elena said. "How can I help you?" The small alien looked up at her with large, dark eyes. "Representative Elena, my people have been paying tribute to the Council for 800 years. We give them half of our world's output and 10,000 of our children each year for their labor programs." Elena felt her heart clench. "I'm sorry to hear that. Today, when you said that word." "No, something changed in our delegation. For the first time in centuries, some of my people began to remember what freedom felt like." Tickrick moved closer to Elena, lowering his voice to barely above a whisper. "Representative, if the Council destroys your world for refusing tribute, what message does that send to the rest of us?" Elena knelt down so she was at eye level with the small alien. "Delegate Tickrick, what message do you think it sends?" "That we are slaves," Tickrick said quietly. "That we have always been slaves. That the Council's talk of voluntary integration and mutual benefit is nothing but lies to make our chains feel lighter." Elena nodded. "And what are you going to do with that knowledge?" Tickrick was silent for a long moment. Then his shell began to glow with a soft blue light. "3 other delegations have contacted us since you left the chamber. The Verilans, the Kef, and the Zenlonians, all tribute-paying species, all asking the same question. What if we said, no too?" Elena felt a surge of hope, but she tried to keep her expression neutral. "That's a decision each species will have to make for themselves. The Council is already calling emergency sessions," Tickrick continued. "They're talking about making an example of Earth. Complete destruction, broadcast across the galaxy to remind everyone what happens to species that resist." "And how do your people feel about that?" Tickrick's shell glowed brighter. "My people are asking why a council that claims to be peaceful and benevolent needs to destroy entire worlds to maintain order. It is a good question, don't you think?" Elena smiled. "It's an excellent question, Delegate Tickrick." The small alien moved toward the door, then turned back. "Representative Elena, the Kellen people want you to know something. Whatever happens to Earth, you have already won. You have reminded the galaxy that freedom is possible. That is a gift that cannot be taken back." After Tickrick left, Elena sat down and thought about what she had heard. The revolution was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Species across the galaxy were beginning to question the system that had oppressed them for millennia. She reactivated the communicator and reconnected with Earth's leadership. "Elena," President Chen said immediately, "you look like you have news." "I do, Madam President. The Council isn't just facing a rebellion from Earth. Other species are starting to question the tribute system. The foundation of their empire is beginning to crack." General Morrison looked excited. "How many species are we talking about?" "I don't know yet, but it's growing. The Council is panicking. They're planning to destroy Earth as an example to keep the other species in line." "That's what we expected," President Chen said grimly. "But here's what they don't understand," Elena continued. "If they commit genocide to maintain their tribute system, they'll be proving to every species in the galaxy that the Council is nothing but a criminal organization. They'll be destroying their own moral authority." Dr. Kim leaned forward. "Elena, that's a very optimistic view, but it won't help us if we're all dead." Elena smiled. "Dr. Kim, I don't think we're going to die. I think the Council is about to discover that the galaxy has changed. The age of tribute is ending, and there's nothing they can do to stop it." Outside her window, Elena could see Council ships moving in formation, their lights blinking in military patterns. But for the first time since arriving at the station, she wasn't afraid. The word no was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, and nothing would ever be the same again. In chambers and meeting rooms throughout the station, alien delegations were holding urgent discussions. The same conversation was happening. On hundreds of worlds, what if we don't have to live like this anymore? What if we can be free? Elena had struck a match and the galaxy was starting to burn. 3 months after Elena spoke that single word in the council chamber, the galaxy was unrecognizable. She stood on the observation deck of the human ship Freedom's Dawn, watching as the ancient council station slowly crumbled. Not from weapons or explosions, but from something more powerful: abandonment. The massive structure that had once housed thousands of alien delegates now held only a few hundred. Ships departed daily, carrying species home to worlds that no longer sent tribute to distant masters. The age of the Galactic Council was ending not with violence, but with a quiet exodus that spoke louder than any battle. Elena's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from Earth. President Chen's face appeared on the small screen, smiling broadly despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Elena, the latest reports from the outer colonies are in. 17 more species have formally withdrawn from the Council this week. That brings the total to 43. Elena nodded, still amazed by how quickly things had changed. What's the status of the Council fleets, Madam President? That's the remarkable thing, President Chen replied. They never attacked. 3 months ago, we were preparing for the end of the world. Now it looks like we never had to fight at all. Elena thought back to those tense weeks after her declaration. The Council had assembled massive fleets, ships capable of turning planets into dust. Everyone expected them to make Earth an example that would terrify the galaxy back into submission. Instead, something unprecedented had happened. Species after species began to openly question the tribute system. The Kellen had been first, followed quickly by the Varlans, the Kef, and dozens of others. Each defection made the next one easier, until entire sectors were declaring their independence from Council authority. Dr. Kim has an interesting theory about why the fleets never moved. President Chen continued. She thinks the Council leadership realized that destroying Earth would only prove our point about their true nature. Elena smiled. Dr. Kim is right, as usual. Chancellor Zix-9 and the others spent 3,000 years convincing the galaxy that they were benevolent protectors. Committing genocide to maintain their tribute system would have shattered that illusion completely. Through the observation window, Elena could see human ships moving in formation with vessels from dozens of other species. The new alliance had grown organically, species reaching out to each other without the Council's interference for the first time in millennia. Elena's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of her friend and colleague, Delegate Tikrik. The small turtle-like alien had become one of the most effective voices for galactic freedom, using his people's experience under Council rule to rally other oppressed species. Elena, Tikrik said in his musical voice, the morning briefings are ready. Would you like to review them? Elena turned away from the window and followed Tikrik to the conference room. The briefing materials were spread across a large table, translated into dozens of languages for the representatives of the various free species. The big news today is from the core worlds, Tikrik explained. 3 more species have announced their withdrawal from the Council, including the Zentaurians. Elena's eyes widened. The Zentaurians were one of the oldest member species of the Council, paying tribute for over 2,000 years. Their defection was a massive blow to the Council's remaining authority. What about the military situation? Elena asked. The Council fleets are still maintaining position around their key stations, but they're not moving against any of the departing species. Our intelligence suggests they're facing massive internal conflicts. Several admiral-level commanders have refused orders to attack civilian populations. Elena reviewed the reports, marveling at how completely the situation had changed. The Council that had once seemed all-powerful was now barely holding together. There's something else, Tikrik said quietly. Chancellor Zix-9 has requested a meeting with you. Elena looked up sharply. The Chancellor wants to meet with me, why? The message was very formal, but the basic request is for negotiations. They want to discuss new frameworks for galactic cooperation. Elena laughed, a sound with no humor in it. 3 months ago, they were threatening to turn Earth into molten rock. Now they want to negotiate. The irony is not lost on any of us, Tikrik agreed. But the question is, should you meet with them? Elena considered the question carefully. The Council was weakened but not destroyed. They still controlled significant military forces and maintained authority over hundreds of worlds. A negotiated end to the crisis might save lives on both sides. Set up the meeting, Elena decided, but make it clear that we're not negotiating Earth's surrender. We're discussing the terms of the Council's transition to a new role in galactic affairs. 2 days later, Elena found herself back in the familiar Council chamber. But everything had changed. The vast space that had once been filled with nearly 1,000 delegates now held fewer than 200. Empty sections stretched throughout the hall like missing teeth, representing the species that had chosen freedom over submission. Chancellor Zix-9 floated in its beam of light, but the rainbow patterns that had once danced through its crystalline form were dimmer now. The being that had once commanded the loyalty of nearly 1,000 worlds now looked tired and old. Representative Elena, the Chancellor said, as she approached the speaking platform, "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Elena noted the change in tone. 3 months ago, the Chancellor had spoken with absolute authority. Now its voice carried a note of uncertainty that she had never heard before. "Chancellor," Elena replied formally, "I'm here to listen to your proposal. The Council recognizes that the galactic political situation has evolved since our last meeting. Many species have chosen to pursue independent development outside the traditional framework. We believe it is time to discuss new arrangements that better serve the needs of all worlds." Elena almost smiled at the diplomatic language. The Chancellor was trying to describe the collapse of its empire without admitting that it had collapsed. "What kind of arrangements are you proposing, Chancellor?" "A voluntary association of worlds," the Chancellor said. "Species would be free to choose their level of participation. Tribute requirements would be adjusted to reflect modern realities." Elena looked around the nearly empty chamber. In the remaining sections, she could see delegates watching nervously. They were the representatives of species still under Council control, still paying tribute, still sending their children to labor on distant worlds. "Chancellor," Elena said clearly, "let me save us both some time. The tribute system is over. It ended the moment humanity said no to your demands. The only question now is whether the transition to freedom happens peacefully, or whether the Council tries to fight a war it cannot win." The Chancellor's form flickered with agitation. "Representative, you speak of matters you do not fully understand. The tribute system maintains stability across—" "The tribute system," Elena interrupted, "is slavery with better marketing. We've had this conversation before, Chancellor. The galaxy has moved beyond your arguments." Elena turned to address the remaining delegates directly. "To the species still paying tribute, you have seen that resistance is possible. You have seen that the Council's threats are empty. You can choose freedom whenever you're ready." Murmurs spread through the chamber as Elena's words were translated. She could see delegates looking at each other with expressions that might have been hope. Chancellor Zix-9 floated lower, its massive form casting shadows across the speaking platform. "Representative Elena, if the Council system ends, what will replace it? How will disputes between worlds be resolved? How will trade be regulated? How will peace be maintained?" Elena looked up at the ancient being and felt a moment of sympathy. For 3,000 years, the Council had convinced itself that its oppression was necessary for galactic stability. They genuinely believed that without their control, the galaxy would collapse into chaos. "Chancellor," Elena said gently, "the same way disputes were resolved before the Council existed, through negotiation, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and voluntary cooperation, free beings working together because they choose to, not because they're forced to." The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, Chancellor Zix-9 simply floated in its beam of light, its crystalline form reflecting patterns of light that looked almost like sadness. Finally, the Chancellor spoke. "If the Council agrees to end the tribute system completely, would the free worlds be willing to establish some form of cooperative organization? A voluntary association for trade and mutual defense?" Elena smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Chancellor, that's exactly what we've been building for the past 3 months. You're welcome to join us, as equals." 6 months later, Elena stood in the same observation lounge where she had watched the Council's collapse. But now she was looking at something new, the first meeting of the Galactic Free Alliance. Representatives from over 300 worlds had gathered to discuss trade, defense, and cooperation. The old Council station had been converted into a neutral meeting place where any species could send delegates. No tributes, no forced labor, no demands for submission. Just free beings working together to build a better galaxy. Elena's communicator buzzed with a message from Earth.